911, what's the location of the emergency?
My daughter is missing.
What's your address, ma'am? And your phone number? Okay. Has she been missing before?
No, she had a fight with her girlfriend and she decided to walk home. And we've been driving around for about an hour and a half. And it's not an hour and a half walk. She's gone. We can't find her anywhere. I've called all her friends.
How old is she?
11.
And when was the last time that she was seen?
It was at 6 o'clock, Steve. Around 6 o'clock.
And she was at a friend's house?
Yeah.
Okay, what's her name, ma'am?
Carlie, C-A-R-L-I-E.
And last name?
Brucia, B-R-U-C-I-A. She's just shy of 5 feet.
Okay. Do you know how much she weighs?
She's around 120 pounds.
And what color hair does she have?
Pretty blonde.
And what color eyes?
Blue.
This was the devastating voice of Susan Skeppen, Carlie's mother, reporting her daughter missing on the night of February 1st, 2004. Her world had just shifted in a way no parent can prepare for, and that call would mark the beginning of a harrowing search, one that would grip the nation and end in unimaginable heartbreak. Welcome back to Chilling Fireside Stories, where I tell true crime stories with the utmost care and respect for the victims and bearable for my community. If you haven't already, please subscribe. It truly helps me continue bringing these important stories to you. These cases deserve to be remembered. Now, settle in and let's begin. Carlie Brucia was born on March 16, 1992. She lived with her mother Susan Shorpen and stepfather in Sarasota, Florida. Described as outgoing and full of life, Carlie adored her pets, loved shopping at the mall, and had a soft spot for Jennifer Lopez. February 1st, 2004 was supposed to be a night of celebration across America with the Super Bowl lighting up screens nationwide. While most were focused on the game, Carlie's family was facing a devastating nightmare. The day she disappeared began like any other. She'd spent the night before at a friend's house, and after an argument with her friend, at around 6:15 p.m., she set off on foot to head home, just 1 mile away. Her friend's mom, cautious and caring, called Susan to make sure it was okay for Carlie to walk home. Susan hadn't given permission. Bridge Road could get busy, and she didn't want her daughter walking alone. Her husband, Stephen, immediately drove out to pick her up. But Carlie was nowhere to be seen. Within the hour, panic set in. Streets were unusually quiet with families huddled around their televisions, but Carlie had vanished. The call to 911 came fast, frantic, filled with desperation. Her parents had checked with friends, knocked on doors. Nothing. And by nightfall, local police had launched a full-scale search. They interviewed Carlie's friends, canvas neighbors, and spoke with her friend's mother, who explained that Carlie had seemed upset earlier. Her parents had been arguing, and she wanted to go home to see her mom. Searches continued deep into the night, well past 3 a.m., but there was still no sign of Carlie. Her classmates, heartbroken and hopeful, showed up to school the next morning expecting to see her walk through the doors with her signature smile. She didn't. That's when the search intensified. Bloodhounds were brought in, tracking her scent to a car wash on Bridge Road. The trail stopped cold at the rear of the property. Investigators spoke with the owner, who revealed there were surveillance cameras triggered by motion sensors. The first few angles showed nothing, just empty spaces and busy roadways. But then they checked the rear camera. The timestamp read 6:21 p.m. And on that screen there she was. A young girl in a red shirt, blue jeans, and a pink backpack, exactly what Carlie had worn when she left her friend's house. And then, the man walked into view. The surveillance footage lasted only seconds, but what it showed was haunting. A man, approximately 5 feet 8 inches, dark-haired, with visible tattoos, approached a young girl in a pink backpack. He wore a mechanic shirt, the name tag too blurred to make out. They spoke briefly, then he took her by the arm and led her away. Just like that, Carlie Brucia was gone. Police reviewed the tape in silence. The message was unmistakable. This child was in grave danger. Her stepfather, Stephen, was called to the station. He described how he'd driven down Bridge Road to pick Carlie up.
Susan says, hey, can you go pick up Carlie? She started walking down Bridge. And I just said, where's she at? She goes, Connie's. And I said, that's the one over here. And she said, yeah. I said, okay, I'm leaving right now. And out the door I went. Okay.
She was supposed to walk just a short distance home. But when he got there, she was nowhere to be found. Carlie wasn't the type to disappear. She always checked in and always let her family know where she was. Something was terribly wrong. Stephen's phone records quickly ruled him out. But he told police something else, something that stuck. He remembered seeing a red truck. It had been circling the area, pulled into the car wash, and later reappeared near Carlie's friend's house. He swore it was the same vehicle. That detail led police to a man named Ron. He lived at the friend's home where Carlie had stayed the night before, and he owned a red truck. He worked in auto repair and wore a uniform that matched the man in the footage. So they brought him in.
Carlie spent the night Saturday?
Yes.
Anything?
Sunday morning, I woke up. I don't know. Nothing happened Saturday night. Okay. You know, they were giddying all night long. You know, I was sleeping in the other room. So I woke up Sunday morning, like I normally do, get up, get ready for work.
So if you didn't see her at any point after...
During the day?
During
No.
the day, or if you went to work?
Absolutely not.
Is that what you wore to work Sunday, or did you...
No, actually, I had a Super Bowl shirt on yesterday.
A great shirt. Is that...
I haven't the slightest idea, so it's definitely not me. It does look like me, doesn't it, though?
Yeah, it kind of looks like you. That's why we're talking to you.
Wow. Yeah, that definitely would not be me there. Honest.
The deputies that you spoke to that night think that that's you.
It's not me. Blow it up. Do what you got to do. Verify my time where I was. You know, I'm more than glad to work with you guys and anything. Believe me, there is no way. I mean, that was me. Honest to God, no way at all. I would never put anybody through that. No way.
How do we get past that, though? That's
verifying where I was at 6:21.
Police verified his alibi with his employer. His time cards checked out. A search of his truck came up empty. Ron was ruled out, but that meant the man in the footage was still unidentified and Carlie was still missing. Susan, Carlie's mother, viewed the footage. She had no idea who the man was. The community was shaken. This hadn't happened under cover of night. It happened in broad daylight, just 300 feet from people going about their lives. Someone was out there, and no one knew who. A $25,000 reward was offered. Police re-examined the footage. That's when they caught a break. 3 minutes before Carlie was abducted, a pale yellow Buick Century, model year 1992, was spotted pulling into the same lot. Moments later, it turned down Bridge Road and came to a stop just outside the car wash. The investigator now had a new lead. The search intensified. Missing posters flooded the streets. Volunteers mobilized. The mayor called Carlie Sarasota's child. They wouldn't stop until she was found, he said. At a press conference, Susan faced the cameras and fought back tears. Carlie, I love you. I have my phone with me at all times. I'm begging, pleading, please help me bring my daughter home. Carlie's father echoed her call. If you can hear this, your mom's waiting for you. 2 days later, on February 3rd, a woman watching the news saw the surveillance video and froze. She recognized the man. She called her husband into the room. He agreed they knew him. He was a former coworker. She remembered his walk, his haircut, his sneakers. The way he reached out. And the way he took Carlie's hand. His name, Joseph Smith. Her husband immediately contacted the detectives and provided both a name and an address. The police headed to the location in an unmarked vehicle and met 2 more officers on site. A neighbor confirmed someone was inside the house, but no one answered the door. Seeking guidance, one of the officers called a supervisor. They soon learned that the man living there, Joseph Peter Smith, was on probation with 2 prior parole violations, though he hadn't been remanded. His probation officer was called to the scene. About 45 minutes later, a woman arrived at the home. She was Joseph's sister, and she agreed to bring him outside. At last, Joseph Peter Smith stood before law enforcement. He was 37 years old, a father of 3, and originally from Brooklyn. His record stretched back to 1993 and included numerous arrests, for heroin possession, prescription drug fraud, and more recently, possession of harmful substances. Just 8 days after completing a prior sentence, he'd reoffended and was placed on probation. He'd also been previously charged, though later acquitted, of kidnapping and false imprisonment. Joseph appeared calm and cooperative when detectives questioned him. Though several witnesses had named him since the footage had aired, one among more than 800 tips, there were discrepancies. He drove a brown Lincoln, not the yellow Buick station wagon captured on surveillance turning near the car wash. Detectives questioned him about his whereabouts on the day Carlie vanished, but he denied visiting the car wash. They asked to examine his tattoos. He was defensive, but allowed it. When presented with a surveillance image, he acknowledged the resemblance, but denied being the man in the footage. Joseph allowed detectives to search both his vehicle and the room he rented. No direct links to Carlie were uncovered. However, officers found a mechanic's uniform with a name tag and drug-related paraphernalia in his car, violations of his parole. He was arrested immediately. While officers searched Joseph's vehicle, Naomi, one of the homeowners at his residence, arrived driving a yellow Buick station wagon, the same make and model seen in the footage. Detectives questioned her about Joseph's whereabouts on the day of Carlie's disappearance. She believed he'd been on the phone with his estranged wife around 6:30 p.m., providing an apparent alibi. Still, the timeline didn't sit right. Later, Naomi's husband, Jeff, went to the station and told investigators his wife had misremembered the details.
Joe came out and said, "Hey, can I use your car?" I said, "Well, just go and how are you going to be for 15 minutes? So I said, "All right, go ahead." What was you wearing at the time? His mechanic suit. Gray. Yellow. When I got up at 6:30, no car. 7:30, I'm ready to walk out the door. Who shows up? Joe. Where the hell you been? What do you look like 7:30 Monday morning? Real clean. Like, he had a good night's sleep, or he's real happy, or he just looked like he had a wonderful night. It was just, the way he acted, from what I know, was just very strange. And I see stuff on the news. You know something? I guess there was a dark side to that story.
He noticed other oddities, too. The back seat of the vehicle had been repositioned. Items had been moved. Something had happened in that car. Jeff handed the Buick over to authorities for forensic examination. With this new information, Joseph's prior alibi unraveled. His whereabouts were no longer accounted for at the time of the abduction, and now investigators knew he'd been driving the station wagon after all. Joseph was read his Miranda rights, so he requested an attorney. Detectives knew the time for vague answers had passed. They had the vehicle. They had the inconsistencies. They had the weight of growing evidence. Now they needed the truth. By the evening of February 4th, investigators were chasing down every lead. That's when Joseph Smith's brother, John, arrived at the police department. He wasn't close with Joseph, he admitted. There was tension between them. On the night Carlie vanished, John got a phone call from his brother at around 8 p.m. He didn't answer it. He didn't speak to him the next day either. Until the next night, when the news broadcast aired the surveillance footage. John and his girlfriend sat frozen as the surveillance footage played. The face, the walk, the uniform. John recognized the man instantly, so did his girlfriend. She even pointed out the way the man walked, different, stiff, ever since Joseph had undergone back surgery. Later that same night, Joseph showed up at John's house, appearing disoriented, possibly under the influence. John refused to let him inside. He had his reasons. Joseph had made inappropriate comments about John's girlfriend's teenage daughter before. But that night something else stood out. Joseph was still wearing his mechanic uniform, but instead of tennis shoes, he had on boots, not his usual look. John refused to let him in, then without another word, closed the door firmly in his face. The message was clear. Whatever Joseph was there to say, it wasn't welcome. The next day, Joseph was seen at work acting strangely, washing his hands over and over again, even though they were clean. He also told his boss he might need to leave the state at a moment's notice. John told the FBI plainly, if he did this, he won't admit to it. He'll take it to the grave. Detectives knew they needed stronger evidence and announced that NASA had been brought in to enhance the surveillance footage. The name tag was finally legible. It read, Joe. The arrest report later revealed that Joseph had deliberately maneuvered the Buick in a way that concealed his approach, just before taking Carlie. Then came the turning point. On February 5th, investigators gave Joseph Smith the opportunity to come clean.
I want to just talk. You and I had some things to talk about, okay? Because some of the things at the house, we got to get straight. That's the most important thing.
Okay.
In this room is about the truth. Okay? It's the most important thing that goes on in this room.
I was already advised to talk to a lawyer.
Can I contact the public defender's office for you? And they can bring a lawyer down here.
During the interview, he insisted on speaking privately with his mother and brother John inside the police station.
I can't talk to you. You have requested a lawyer.
What about my family? Why can't I call them? You know, I want to talk to my parents or my brother.
The police then allowed Joseph's mother and brother to have a private conversation with him, which lasted over an hour. When John emerged, he told officers that Joseph hadn't revealed anything important. Authorities didn't press further. There was no follow-up interview, no recording, and no surveillance, just silence. But that silence didn't last. Later that night, John made a cryptic call to the FBI. He assumed they already knew what had happened during the meeting. They didn't. Only then did agents realize Joseph had likely confessed something, and John, believing his phone might be tapped, was hesitant to speak freely. Agents went straight to John's home. There, he finally shared what he had withheld. Joseph had revealed the location of Carlie's body. He directed them to a field behind the Central Church of Christ, off Proctor Road near Interstate 75. At 1 a.m., officers arrived. They searched dense underbrush behind the church, and that's where they found her. Carlie Brucia lay in the grass, partially clothed, with a single sock on her right foot. A ligature wound marked her neck, evidence of strangulation. The discovery confirmed what investigators had feared most. John was brought back in and, this time, told the truth. During the earlier meeting, Joseph had expressed regret. After their mother had left the room, he described taking what he believed was an illegal substance the day of Carlie's disappearance, and claimed everything after that was a blur. John could tell Joseph was afraid, unable to admit outright what had happened. He skirted around the truth. John said he had to fill in the gaps himself, assume what Joseph couldn't say. So he asked his brother, "Just tell us where she is." After leaving the station that night, John and their mother had tried to search for Carlie behind the church. But they didn't find her. It wasn't until hours later that Joseph told them she was in the field. Still, John didn't report it immediately. He didn't trust the information. He wasn't convinced Joseph had actually confessed to killing her. Part of him, he later admitted, still held hope. If Carlie were somehow alive, his plan was to rescue her and use the situation to raise money for a lawyer to defend his brother. But there was no rescue to make. Carlie was gone. Eventually, Joseph admitted the full scope of his crimes. He had assaulted her in the vehicle. Then, he tragically ended her life. The night Carlie was found, a storm swept in. With concerns about media helicopters and the possibility of aerial footage leaking, law enforcement made the agonizing decision to leave her body in place until morning. In a rare move, the Sarasota police reached out to the White House and received authorization for a temporary no-fly zone over the area. The following morning, Carlie's body was examined by the medical examiner. She had been dragged into the field and strangled from behind. Ligature marks on her wrists revealed she'd been restrained. DNA found on her shirt confirmed the identity of her attacker, Joseph Smith. Statistically, the odds of it belonging to anyone else were so small they were virtually impossible, 1 in 32 quintillion. Investigators found more. 2 of Carlie's hairs were recovered from the Buick. 7 fibers matched the red shirt she'd been wearing. Her backpack and clothing had been discarded in different bins, a calculated attempt to erase the trail. Then came the moment no officer ever wants to face. Sheriff Bill Balkwell was sent to deliver the news to Carlie's mother, Susan. Upon hearing it, she collapsed in grief. The pain was so raw, so overwhelming, that it echoed far beyond the walls of their home. Later, Sheriff Balkwell addressed the public. His voice trembled as he confirmed what everyone had feared. The body of 11-year-old Carlie Brucia had been found. Her killer was in custody. The response from the community was immediate. Families who had joined the search, who had held out hope, now gathered at the church with flowers in hand and tears in their eyes. McIntosh Middle School arranged grief counseling. Parents tightened their grip on their children. Even something as simple as walking to the mailbox no longer felt safe. Outside Carlie's home, neighbors held a candlelight vigil. Posters and handmade signs lined the yard, messages of love and heartbreak. Her father, Joe, stood among the crowd and thanked every person who had helped search for his daughter. Days later, from inside jail, Joseph Smith spoke to his mother.
Joe, the best thing that you could do is just try and explain it was an accident.
Mom, it was an accident, Mom.
I know that, Joe.
You don't think that I would do that on purpose, Mom?
The conversation was manipulative. He tried to suggest it had all been accidental. His mother didn't want to believe otherwise. But by now, the community was demanding answers and accountability. On February 10th, a memorial service was held for Carlie. Hundreds arrived: family, officers, neighbors. Sheriff Balkwell stood among them. It was the moment no one had wanted to face, yet everyone had prepared for. 10 days later, formal charges were announced: kidnapping, sexual battery, and first-degree murder. Florida law allowed for the possibility of a death sentence. Captain Jeff Bell made it clear the department was ready to pursue the strongest sentence possible. Then came another devastating revelation. While awaiting trial, a letter Joseph had written to his brother was intercepted. It was written in code, later broken by investigators. Inside were admissions: how he'd discarded Carlie's belongings across multiple dumpsters, left her in the open, and dragged her body to the final location. He instructed his brother to destroy the letter. The case was already strong. The coded note sealed it. But the damage didn't stop there. Before the trial began, Carlie's grandmother passed away. Some said it was heartbreak that took her. Her grandfather left the country. He too would pass quietly not long after. Then came word that Carlie's uncle had died in a crash, his truck driven straight into a tree. Some believed it was intentional. The grief was relentless, woven into every corner of the family's life. A month before trial, Joseph's legal team tried to suppress the most critical evidence. They questioned the validity of the surveillance footage, argued that timestamps couldn't be verified. They challenged the confession made to his brother, claiming the FBI had violated his right to legal counsel. But the FBI pushed back. They confirmed that Joseph's brother had voluntarily requested the visit, and that the meeting had only gone forward with full legal approval. In the end, the defense couldn't shake the evidence. Joseph Smith would face trial, and the truth was impossible to ignore. The video, the DNA, the car, and the confession. And the most damning fact of all, he led them directly to where she was. The trial marked one of the most painful chapters in the aftermath of Carlie's death. For families, officers, and volunteers who had searched for her, the courtroom became a place of torment, where every detail had to be relived. Among the witnesses was Joseph Smith's brother, John, whose testimony came with complications. At the time, he was facing serious charges of his own and was later found to have been under the influence during his time on the stand. His unreliable appearance led prosecutors to request that he be declared a hostile witness, a rare and delicate move in such a high-profile case. Despite the challenges, the evidence presented was overwhelming: surveillance footage and DNA evidence, a coded letter detailing elements of the crime, and the recording from Joseph's conversation with his mom.
I will now be preparing to present further evidence on November the 28th, and will be arguing that a sentence of life in prison without possibility of parole is the best decision in this case.
I lost one of the most precious things to me in my life because of an animal, a disgusting, perverted animal.
On December 1st, 2004, the jury reached a decision. The The majority ruled that Joseph Smith should be sentenced to death by lethal injection. A few months later, in mid-March, the judge confirmed the sentence. The court acknowledged the depth of suffering Carlie had endured, how at just 11 years old, she had been fully aware of her fate and had no hope of escape. Her death was ruled as calculated, premeditated, and without mercy. The sentence was delivered with finality. Joseph Smith had forfeited his right to live freely among others. From inside jail, Smith issued a statement accepting responsibility. He claimed to have been impaired at the time of the crime and insisted that he couldn't recall much. For Carlie's family, those words offered no comfort. Her stepfather expressed a dull ache that never lifted and a quiet sense of justice that felt delayed and incomplete. Susan, Carlie's mother, wasn't present during sentencing. She was incarcerated on charges that followed years of emotional decline after losing her daughter. By her own admission, she had turned to substances in an attempt to escape the unbearable grief. While on death row, Smith filed appeal after appeal, each rejected in turn. But in 2016, a ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court changed the landscape. Florida's death penalty law was deemed unconstitutional due to its allowance of non-unanimous jury verdicts in capital sentencing. As a result, Smith's death sentence was overturned in 2018, reinstated in 2020, and once again challenged in 2021. Though his conviction remained intact, his punishment was once again undecided. Carlie's father, Joe, felt deeply betrayed. He and his family began writing letters, urging the state to honor its promise and reassert the original sentence. To them, justice had to carry weight. It had to reflect the magnitude of loss. At the church where Carlie's body had been found, a quiet caretaker continued tending the memorial. He had lost his own granddaughter to violence years before and understood the unique depth of the family's pain. To him, the resentencing was complex. It couldn't undo what had happened, but the law, he felt, should carry through to its conclusion. Joe remained vocal. His frustrations centered not just on the appeals, but on the broader system itself. Smith had already violated parole before taking Carlie's life. He'd been discovered unconscious in a parking lot with a dangerous substance in his possession. According to parole guidelines, that should have triggered a 5-year sentence. But instead, he was placed on a lenient technical provision, one that allowed him to remain free. For Joe, that decision wasn't just a failure of policy. It was the reason his daughter never came home. By 2021, nearly 2 decades after Carlie's murder, the case was still dragging through the court system. Joseph Smith's sentencing had become a long, painful process, filled with delays, appeals, and legal technicalities. For Carlie's father, Joe Brucia, the extended timeline was agonizing. He had waited years for justice, only to watch it slip through loopholes and procedures. The frustration built into anger. And over time, that anger hardened into something far heavier: resentment. Joe turned to the internet for answers and found a disturbing pattern. Across the country, other families had lost children to repeat offenders who had been released on parole or probation. Carlie's case wasn't isolated. It was part of a much larger problem. Determined to make sure his daughter's death wouldn't be in vain, Joe contacted Florida Representative Katherine Harris and pleaded for legislative change. Moved by the story, Harris introduced Carlie's Law, a bill intended to prevent violent offenders from exploiting second chances. The legislation aimed to close the gaps that had allowed Smith, and others like him, to remain free despite serious violations. Carlie's Law proposed that federal felons be returned to custody if they committed a violent act or an offense involving a minor. It also included provisions to strengthen and extend Amber Alert funding, helping communities respond more swiftly to child abductions. Lawmakers from other states, including Texas Representative Nick Lampson, supported the bill. But despite its urgency, Carlie's Law faced opposition. Corrections officials argued it would cost nearly $1 billion to implement nationwide, citing the financial burden of reincarcerating repeat offenders. Joe was outraged. To him, no amount of money could outweigh the value of a child's life. Although Harris promised to reintroduce and expand the bill, it quietly fell away. Carlie's law was never passed. But the headlines weren't done with Joseph Smith. Bradenton police revealed that he was now a suspect in another murder, that of 25-year-old Tara Riley. Tara's body had been found in a retention pond behind a Walmart in 2000. She'd been seen arguing with a man in the parking lot just before her death. Leads came in, but nothing held. The case faded into silence. Years later, Tara's name resurfaced during a prison phone call involving Smith. His brother John knew Tara. They had worked together. He told investigators that Tara had rejected Smith romantically just before her death, and he suspected that humiliation had pushed his brother toward violence. It was a theory supported by Tara's kind nature and by the tragic pattern that now followed Joseph Smith's name. Her case, like Carlie's once had, was waiting for closure, and this time, a single story was helping reignite a long-forgotten pursuit of justice. 17 years after Carlie's abduction, a breaking news bulletin closed the chapter on Smith. He passed away in Union Correctional Institution on July 26, 2021, at the age of 55. The cause of death was unclear at first, though later reports suggested liver cancer, while others pointed to complications from hepatitis C. With Smith gone, the justice system could no longer offer any further closure through sentencing or appeals. The legal battles were over, finally. Tara Riley's murder remained unsolved. And with Joseph Smith now deceased, any lingering hope of uncovering the truth faded. He had never confessed, neither to Tara's death nor fully to Carlie's. He died a coward, his brother John said.
Carlie's mother could speak to Smith.
If I could speak to him, I'd like to know why he chose my daughter and why he had to kill her. And I'm sure she'd let him know that she was only 11 years old. How could he go through with it?
Susan Skeppin never recovered from the loss. Her grief shaped the rest of her life, and in the years that followed, she struggled deeply. Eventually, she passed away at just 47. Those who had known Susan spoke of her unwavering love for her daughter. One remembered standing alongside her at the site where Carlie's body had been found, joined by a sheriff in solemn prayer. It was a moment etched into memory, full of pain and quiet reverence. Carlie Brucia had been just 11 years old. Her life was bright, full of music, laughter, and boundless affection. She greeted everyone with joy, arms outstretched, offering hugs and warmth without hesitation. To those who knew her, she was a light. What are your thoughts on this devastating case? Do you think Joseph Smith should have ever been out on the streets? And what could more have been done to prevent this tragedy? Let's talk in the comments. Thank you for watching Chilling Fireside Stories. Until my next video, stay safe and look after your loved ones.